when I'm at conferences, the great thing about going to conferences is you always come out with new quotes. People always have that clever quote that you write down. And one which has been used quite a lot in many of the conferences I got, and they always say it's an African proverb. Because if you say it's an African proverb, it's wise. You know, it's always deep. It's not a Welsh saying, no, it's an African proverb. But they always say, you know, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And in many ways, it is wise, and it is an interesting thing. But my question has always been, but what happens if you want to go far and fast? Because quite frankly, that to me sort of sums up the dilemma of collaboration. And the dilemma of collaboration that we have in our working life is we know intuitively that it is right to work with other people. We know intuitively that we can go further when we go together. We know intuitively that people have knowledge which is of value to the achievements that we wish to achieve. But that's intuitively. When it comes down to it, everything that has made us successful, everything that has brought us to this point in time has been an individual success. Or that's how we've been rewarded. Most of the systems you operate under, be it in the public sector or in the private sector, are individual rewards-based systems, from school onwards. I mean, I always know, you know, I often say my kids, we try to bring them up the best we can. You know, it's quite funny, before you have children, you have all these plans, and then they come, and then it all falls apart, and you just kind of cope. But, you know, when we have children, we always say to our kids, you know, share your toys and play and be kind to the other children and all of that. So then they go to school, and then when they get to school, they sit down, and then they get their first test. And if they're kind of like every other kid, the first thing they do when they get their first test is they turn to the person next to them, and they say, hey, what did you get? Because I'm going to... And then the teacher says, oi, it's the test. You're not supposed to talk to each other. And from that point onwards, everything becomes an individual measure. So the children are kind of growing up with this idea that actually I have to be the best I can be, but actually I have to be better than other people. And if it's only when I'm better than other people that actually I can get anywhere. And that happens to us throughout our careers, because most organizations are still in the shape of a pyramid somehow, and there's less people at the top. And actually, you get promoted by being faster, better, more clever, or whatever it is, than other people. So you have this dual idea in your mind of, we need to be together, but actually it's going to slow me down. We're going to achieve less. And constantly you have those two forces of, I know it's right to do, but it goes against everything that I feel. So what I want to do is I want to try to resolve the two, and to keep with Roger, because I knew I was going to be after Roger Black. And it was quite interesting to me that actually the single record for the single men 400 meters is 43 seconds, but the world record for the 4 times 100 is actually faster. So actually you can go faster together. In fact, if you put 4 people to run the same distance, it is faster than one person trying to do it on their own. So it's a fallacy to even believe that actually you can go faster on your own than with other people. The difference between the African proverb and that set of data is discipline. And that's what I really want to talk about today. I want to talk about what I call discipline collaboration. Because the idea is if you have discipline in the way you organize your collaboration, you have a chance to do it. It's not good enough to say, let's keep in touch, I'm sure there's great things we can do. You have to have discipline in the way you collaborate. And the idea of discipline and collaboration together doesn't always sit comfortably. Now, let me explain to you what I mean by collaboration. So for me, collaboration can be easily replaced by impact and influence. How do we impact and influence other people around us? And if you think of collaboration as impact and influence, you realize that actually, as we grow, things change. And we move from an understanding of ourselves to others. It's other people who start impacting ourselves, and then we eventually realize we can impact other people. Think of children again. When a child is born, they have no power. Okay? They have nothing. They can't even feed themselves. They're entirely reliant on their parents for their impact. They do nothing to other people other than cry and annoy you at night. Even as they grow up, you know that is true, because the one thing that every child shares anywhere in the world, in a playground, is to say to other kid, my daddy is bigger than yours. my mum is prettier than yours. They always appeal to an external force, to other people, in order to get their power, their impact, their influence. And it's only as we start to grow older that we realize we have impact on the world. We go through this weird adolescent phase when we think we need nobody. So you go through adolescence, you forget all about other people, and then eventually as an adult you gain what in psychology is called assertive power, the idea that you can assert yourself on the world, the idea that you can have an impact on other people. And it's at that stage that we start by a very undeveloped power, which is the idea that we can have impact on other people by being bigger than them. So this is called personalized power, the idea that if I make you feel smaller, it automatically makes me feel bigger. You know, I have a bigger house than you, I have a bigger car than you, I've got a bigger wife than you, whatever it is that you want. It's always me versus you, always me by being, and we see a lot of it at work. I mean, in some leaders, you walk in their office and there's pictures of them with all the famous people in the world, and you know for a fact that this is about them saying, it's all about me. But then there's some other leaders who tend to be slightly different. When you walk into their room, you know it's all about you. So we go through this stage of power. There is a point at which, and the only piece of data we know is that women are different from men on that point, is women tend to gravitate to what we call socialized power quicker than men, which is they suddenly become more interested in making you bigger. And by the time, and it's still a form of impact, because if I make you more successful, I too will benefit from it. I too will be more successful as a result. And you know, if any of you have read Jim Collins, Good to Great, he talks about level 5 leadership. There's a whole lot of different words. It's in psychology, it's called stage 4 power. It's this idea that you start to have an impact on other people. You start to be stronger by making other people more successful. And that's the point, that transition from it being me to it being me making you stronger is the position at which we can start to talk about collaboration. It's the point at which there is no fear of loss in terms of collaborating with other people. So really, there's 3 levels that need to be at play before we make collaboration happen. And I'm going to talk you through the 3, because I think once we've got those put together, we're in a good place. So level 1 I call personal. You have to feel strong in yourself in order to be able to give something of yourself. If you haven't got that, if you haven't got certainty of what your value is, you cannot impact the world around you. Then you start to bring people together and work with them, which is what I call social, when we work together. And then eventually you may, at some stage, get to a place where it is no longer about you. We call this interdependent power, where actually, as an individual, it is no longer about you, but it's about you being a conduit for other people. It's about you enabling other people to perform at their best without you being involved. Psychologists tend to go, we talk about the Mandelas, the Gandhis, the people who kind of somehow enable communities to realize their own power and work without them. It becomes kind of a big thing. My view is always, if you have to spend 26 years in jail or being shot at by the British in order to get there, it's probably not something we'll all want to be at, but it might come in handy to start thinking about, actually, how do I get a community to work? And actually, if I think about you in terms of what you do for a living, that's pretty important. It's pretty important to think through, how do I orchestrate a community to work with themselves, for themselves, without actually me being the center of attention? And that's an interesting place to be. So let me position those as being a kind of a pyramid. If you haven't got level 1, you cannot have level 2. Yeah, it's a pyramid that ends up being built on sand. And Roger was actually talking about that, where he said, one of the things about the team is we were a team of great individuals. And I think it is a fallacy to assume that in order for teams to work, you don't need great individuals. And I think that what makes it so difficult and what makes collaboration so difficult at work is actually you are surrounded by great individuals that you have to somehow bring to work. And if they're not great, then you will never want to collaborate. So you start at level 1 and you eventually move up to level 3. Level 1 I call profession. Okay? And the reason I call it profession is because there is an idea in profession which is about public declaration. Yeah? The Latin root of profession is about being able to publicly declare something. And for you to know your profession, for you to be able to set out what you're good at, is absolutely critical, yet it's not something we do. I mean, actually, very few people know what they're good at. Very few people are able to articulate what value they bring to the world. It is fascinating to me how little time we spend on thinking about what is my unique value. What is it that I bring to the world? This is my tailor. His name is Andrew Ramrup, and Andrew owns Maurice Sedwell at number 19 on Savile Row. The reason I went to meet Andrew is a very interesting man. He not only is a very successful, probably arguably the best tailor on Savile Row, but he did something that no other tailor has ever done on Savile Row. He started a school. He has an academy. And he started a school to teach other tailors to become great tailors. That intrigued me, which is why I went to meet with Andrew. And the reason it intrigued me is because I thought, why on earth did you do it when nobody else had done it before? I said, why did you do it? Like, aren't you afraid they're going to take your customers? And he said, well, if they take my customers, then that means I didn't deserve to keep them. So actually, I'm not afraid because I know my clients won't leave me. And then I said to him, well, why won't they leave you? And he said something which was said very intellectually by another gentleman called Sebastian Song. But what Andrew said is, I am not my knowledge. I am not what I know. I am everything that makes me. And the danger at work is, this is a brain cell, by the way. If you're ever accused of having only one, you know it's cute. Okay? It's not an eye. Okay? We always see faces in things as human beings. It's just a little bit of flesh. Firing electricity is horrible. But the idea that we get at work is that we are the collection of what we know, and that's a fallacy. And as long as you think that you are what you know, you will not share what you know because what you know makes you unique. And collaboration is about working and sharing what you know. So we can't have collaboration until we understand that what makes us unique is all the connections that we have in our lifetime. Now, if that's what you do, then you remove the fear of collaboration because you know you have nothing to lose, because nobody will ever be you. I mean, there was a sticker in the US. I know there's an American person here. We were driving in California years ago, and there was a bumper sticker, and it said, "You are unique, just like everybody else," which I thought was just fantastic, fantastic sticker. But, you know, once you know what you're unique for, then nobody's going to replicate that because that's just you. So you are less afraid to start sharing with other people because you can't be replaced, which is an important part of collaboration. So where do we go next? We go to, actually, how do we get around the table and you and me start working together? How do we produce something out of all of these individuals? Which is why I call it production. Now, this is interesting. Production is interesting. I do a lot of consulting work. And every time I meet a new organization, it makes me feel like somehow I'm watching television. Every company, especially in the private sector, every company I know has a one program. One BBC, one BT, one Vodafone, one. They all have a one show, you know. We have to have one BBC or one NHS or one thing. Do you have a one program where you work? There's loads of projects that have got the one in it, one this. And it's no wonder that people have issues with being one. And that's mainly due to the way our organizations are conceptualized. This is an organization. Now, I get a lot of calls from senior people saying, Emmanuel, can you come and help us because our divisions aren't working well with each other? At which point I normally stop and say, just think for 1 second, what did you just call them? Oh, our divisions are divided. Duh, you know. That's what you wanted, that's what you got, you know. That's why you call them divisions, is because you didn't want them to work together in the first place. And actually, part of an organization is just that. It's organized. It's the idea that we all have a role to fulfill, and we need to organize it, and they're all the same. That's an organization. And an organization is basically fundamentally energized by a set of people trying to make sense of the world. And actually, every organization is fundamentally two organizations. One is a set of systems and processes, and the other one is a bunch of people trying to make sense of a set of systems and processes. And actually, if you want to get anything done anywhere, you're better off going to that one, which you and I call having a friend, rather than trying to follow processes, which will get you nowhere. And the trick, and I wrote about that in my first book, the trick is how do we bring the two together? How do we start to energize? But for collaboration, we need to understand the dynamics of that world. And the dynamics of that world are fundamentally different. And here I do a split between two worlds. On the one hand, you have your organization, your chart. On the other hand, you have what I like to call a company. And I love the word company, because the Latin root for the word company, you can tell I did Latin at school, I was pathetic at it. The Latin root of the word company is the same as companionship, companion. It stands for breaking bread together. And for me, most organizations are fundamentally at core a bunch of people breaking bread together, especially in some of the sectors you represent, where people come to it because they want to share that bread, because they want to help to break the bread together. And if you think about those two, if you think on the one hand about the processes and on the other hand about people trying to make sense of the world together, you operate on the three very different principles. So on the one hand, organizations work through roles, rules, and economic incentive. Let me teach you what you're going to do. This is how you're going to do it. That's your role. That's the rule. If you do it properly, I'll pay you. If you don't, I won't. Okay? That's as simple as that. On the other hand, if you go to a company, a bunch of people in a startup or somewhere where nobody gets paid, because if you remove that bit, it becomes interesting, you start to find that it's not about the role, it's about the individual. What I want to get out of this. What do I see myself as being? And then the reason they do stuff is not because there's a rule, but because there's the idea of reciprocity, give and take. But there's also an underpinning idea in here, which is the idea of social and moral obligation. I've told this story many times before. I will tell it again. I apologize if you heard it before. But that idea of social and moral obligation was really brought home to me by my daughter. Charlotte, when she was 8, so she's 16, you can tell how long I've been telling the story. When she was 8, Charlotte came up to me, she said, "Papa," that's the only French she knows. She said, "Papa," sad but true, she's as Essex as can be. I mean, we live in Essex. So she said, "Papa, I want pocket money." Now, do you have kids? Have you had the pocket money discussion? If you're a normal parent, which you are, you can say yes, you can say no. It's your choice. I'm not a normal parent. I'm a leadership development professional. So when my daughter says, "Papa, I want pocket money," I'm thinking, this is a learning opportunity. So I said, "Lulu," I call her Lulu. I said, "Lulu, I could give you pocket money, but no. I'm a leadership development professional." You can tell by age 9, loser, she was going, you know. I said, "No, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to teach you the value of money through the act of giving you pocket money." And I'm a bit of an HR guy. So if you come to my house, there's a flip chart on the fridge. HR people, we all have flip charts at home. Any HR people here? Flip charts at home. And I thought I'm going to do like an executive incentive scheme, you know, like a big one, like a Barclays Bank type incentive, you know, one you can really make money. So here is the thing. So on the fridge, there's a flip chart. And the flip chart says this: for brushing your hair every day, she has long hair. For brushing your hair every day, you'll get 10 pence. For brushing your teeth every day, you'll get 10 pence. For tidying your bedroom every day, you'll get 10 pence. For doing your homework every day, you'll get 40 pence, because in France, education is more important than hygiene. For not shouting at your brother, which I will call a stretch target. Make it 10 quid if you want, it's never going to be paid, all right? And so, "But Papa, that's not going to happen." "I know, darling, it's a stretch target, but what's the point of it? It's motivational." "But what is we have a big discussion. Age 8. So Charlotte is doing incredibly well. The week is going well. She's now unionized with her brother. And then we're sitting at home Saturday night, payday is Sunday, we're sitting at home Saturday night. I said, Lulu, you've done incredibly well, but you know what? You haven't tidied your bedroom. How about, I'm trying to sound as excited as an American dad, how about you go up to your bedroom and tidy it, and it's going to be brilliant, you're going to have the whole thing. So she goes upstairs. 15 minutes go by with no noise in the house. If you have more than one child, and for 15 minutes you haven't heard a sound, something's going on and it's not what you planned, okay? So I go upstairs, open the door, the bedroom is in a mess, the toys are everywhere, Charlotte is lying on her bed, she's painting her nails, Essex, she's painting her nails pink, okay, AJ. Now, I've been in the UK 29 years, I do not hit my children before talking to them now. So I say, Lulu, because in France, you take no shit, you know, pow, and then that's stuff. No, in the UK, you talk. So I talk. That's not true, okay? Don't, because I know you guys, social services people, that's not true, okay? Oh, you know, I can see people making notes. I'm thinking, are they taking notes on the speech, or are they calling someone? What the hell? Sending an email. So I said, Lulu, we had a deal, right? We had a deal. You were going to tidy the bedroom. Yeah. She looks back at me, most beautiful eyes in the world. She said, Papa, I've been thinking. For 10 pence. It's not really worth it, though, is it? But that's not the lesson. The lesson, what was interesting, was the following weekend, where I said, Lulu, George, that's my boy. Lulu, George, we're going to see Grandma and Grandpa today. Charlotte came down the stairs at the speed of light. She went straight to the kitchen, straight to the fridge. She looked at it up and down about 20 times. She turned around and she said, Papa, how much is it for going to see Grandma and Grandpa? Because it's not on here. And this is the issue. The issue is that the minute you introduce this, you run a big risk of losing this. The minute you put an economic incentive in place, you lose social and moral obligation. And we know about that. There's a lot of studies. It's not just my kids. You can lose countless studies that will tell you that the minute you put an economic incentive or an economic disincentive, the idea of community, the idea of social obligation goes out of the window. The only way to reconnect the two is by making social obligation stronger. We had to have a conversation with my children about what is the value of grandparents other than money. Yeah? What is it that you get? Because she didn't get it. Because suddenly I said to her, what matters is what's on the chart, and what's on the chart you get paid. So you have to be really careful about how you bring the two together. Because that, again, bringing the two together is where you get production, is where people start to collaborate with each other around a set of goals. So I thought, actually, if I want to understand how we reconnect those two worlds, games become quite interesting. Because actually in games, there's some really intriguing dynamics between collaboration and competition. Most games have a collaborative element. Even this one, which you're utterly addicted to, and I'm on level 405, because I have no job. So I spend a lot of time playing games. I call it research. By just mentioning it to you, it has suddenly made everything I've spent tax deductible. Any tax people? That's not true, okay? But why am I mentioning it? I'm mentioning this because if you think about the dynamics of games, they're quite interesting. Even in Candy Crush, which is fundamentally something you play on your own. For those of you who have a life, it's kind of a game on your phone or iPad, and you play it on your own. But there's a whole social dynamic about knowing who is playing what, letting other people know. You go via Facebook because you're too mean to buy anything, so you're trying to get your friends to encourage you and so on and so forth. But the dynamic of games is really different from the dynamic of work. So if you think about what's the incentive, you have to get adults to start adopting childlike behaviors. You have to get adults to somehow play like kids used to before the teacher said to them, don't share. And games can help you do that. And actually, it works the other way around. This is a fantastic little app by a place in the US called Sick Kids. This is an app to encourage kids to talk about their pain. And it's developed as a game so that the kids will engage with that, and then they'll get badges for when they declare they've got a lot of pain, because it encourages children to be more comfortable sharing their pain. It's a fascinating app where kids can learn to talk like grown-ups by going through kids' behavior. But on the other hand, you can do it with adults too. We love games. Yeah, that's why people are on Foursquare. Have you ever been on Foursquare? You know those things you get on Facebook and the like, every time somebody checks into somewhere? I've just arrived at Starbucks in Toronto or something. And you just go, the only reason you're on there is because you want to tell everybody you're in Toronto, right? Because you're like, so important. But actually, it's part of the thing. And then people become mayor or something. And so as adults, game dynamics are very important to us. And what game dynamics do is they somehow reconnect this kind of incentive with this sense of obligation. And there's some really interesting stuff you can do. And what I would encourage you to do is to start thinking about what you want people to collaborate on, no longer as a project, but as a game. So actually, if this was a game, how would I organize it? How would I make that game come to life? And you know, games kind of, these are, again, some elements of how games are conceptualized. So people decide how collaborative, how competitive do I want that game to be? Is the reward intrinsic, you feel good, or is it extrinsic? We give you something like a badge or so on. So, you know, is it multiplayer, is it on your own? So chart your projects like this. Chart your tasks like this. Think about those dimensions and say, what kind of game is it going to be? Because when you start doing it like this, it takes a whole new meaning. And the meaning is much closer to the meaning of collaboration than just putting a project plan together. Let me share the last one, because I'm over time, and the last one won't take too long. The idea then is we move into level 3, which is promotion, which is actually the level you really want to be at, which is when you start to become unimportant to most people. The true leader is out of control but still in charge. You know the difference between being in control. You are not in control as a leader. You're still in charge. You still matter, but you cannot control the outcomes. If you control everything, you're not leading anybody. You're pulling them with you, or you're pushing them, but actually there is something beyond you. And we need to reach that level where we say, how do I get people to collaborate with each other? And what does that? What helps them move forward is normally a narrative. And actually, even games, the thing people always forget when they build games is the narrative. What's the narrative of the game? What's the story of the game? And so in order to get people to move around a certain aspect, you have to give them a story. But better than that, you have to get them to think about the story. You can't script the whole story, because otherwise you're just, again, making them obey your story. You have to somehow give them a story. I'll give you an idea. This is quite powerful to me anyway. Ernest Hemingway was asked, can you write a short story? Because we know you can write books, but can you write a short story? And he said, oh yeah. He said, I'll write one with 6 words. And here is what he wrote. Now I'm pretty sure that what's going on in your head is, what the hell happened to the kid? Now you're all kind of, you know, thoughtful people, so you're probably imagining the worst, okay? I'm just thinking big feet, small shoes, you know? I mean, that's all. I'm thinking the kid came out, huge feet, a bit like Roger Black. Did you see those feet? Don't tell me you weren't looking at the feet. You saw the feet. But here is the point. The point is those 6 words are not the story. Those 6 words make you write the story, because in your head you've started to make the story. And this is what you want. This is what you want to give to people. What are the 6 words that are going to get people? Because you're still thinking about the kid, you're still thinking about the shoes, so people are not thinking about, oh, what am I going to do during my holidays? You've given them something powerful enough to direct their thinking, but not so detailed that actually they're doing what you've told them to do, which is not collaboration. It's just doing what you told them to do. So how do we get there? 3 elements. The first one is get it out of you. You've got a story. You've got a powerful story you can start to share. So your personal experience helps you. Start with, who are you? Okay, maybe who are you? Who are you? I don't know. You choose your flag. It doesn't really matter. But who are you? Where are you going? And why are you going there? That has to be the beginning of your story. That has to be a source of inspiration for the story you build for your people. Who are we? Where are we going? Why are we going there? You can also get it from other places. You get it from your company experience. Your company, and by that I mean the people you are sharing bread with each other, come from somewhere. You have a history. You've decided on being together in the first place. Most organizations I know have a flip. They all start as a purpose in search of assets, and eventually, at some stage in their growth, they become one huge asset in search of a purpose. Yeah? It was a great idea, and we all wanted to make it work, and now it's working. Why are we here? And you have to reconnect to that sense of purpose. So again, go back in time. Why did we do what we did in the first place? Why do we exist? Why are we here? Now, the other place you can get it is just human history. We all have a sense of purpose somewhere. So you can get the people around you to start talking to you about that sense of purpose. PSMW wrote a wonderful little booklet years ago about appreciative inquiry. And if you haven't got hold of it, I have a PDF, I can send it, but it's on the website. I would urge you to read it, because the way you get to everybody's purpose is by getting everybody around a table and discussing it with them differently. I haven't got time to tell you about it, but actually I've just nicked it from PSMW. So you might as well go straight to the source and get it for real. But the idea of having different conversations with people. I leave you with that idea that actually those 3 steps taken together will maybe help you to behave differently as a community after summer school than you did before.